Hello, how are you doing?
Hey, good. You?
Good, having a good afternoon.
Yes. Just
Um,
nice to see some sunshine here.
it is
We're
nice,
finally getting some.
very
I can see it
nice.
coming in your window too.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
know.
nice.
It's like, it's like I need some sunshine. Need
Yes.
some brightness. So, okay.
Heard you've
So,
been having some fun lately.
oh yeah, I'm doing some little bit of algebra, a little bit of everything.
Oh, I'm
Home
just
for a
talking about
long
work
time.
stuff. Your recent work.
So that's what we need to talk about today.
Okay.
My favorite conversation, as you know, is and this is working with employees, therapists.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You could probably guess where I'm going to ask you, but I
I
think my
yes.
least favorite thing to do is plans of actions, terminations,
You'd
dealing
rather
with.
do party planning.
I'll do party planning. I'll do all that fun stuff. But when it comes to these things, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. You say
And
nobody likes them,
I
but I think people
smile.
do.
I smile, and it's just because I was watching a post from Glennon Doyle. She writes like Untamed and everything.
Yes,
Highly
yes,
recommend that if you haven't read it as a
yeah.
therapist out there. It's life changing. But she was talking about how she smiles and she can't help it when she's uncomfortable, and that's like what's happening with me right now. You think I like it? I don't like it. And that's what people will tell me is like, oh, but I don't like confrontation, and I'm like, I don't like it. I just see it as a necessary evil. Like I just realize we have to do it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so yes, Tara's one to more like hide under the
Yeah,
comforter
and be like,
or under the
"Eh,"
table or behind
like you're
her
doing.
computer. I agree with Kelly, on
Yeah,
things like this, where I have to be very planned and very
yeah,
objective. And I think
yeah,
that's something that everybody struggles with at any point in time is
yeah,
we have to have facts lined out as far as why it can't be, I just don't like the way they do this, or, that's why you really need to make sure that you have a really good policy and procedures manual, no matter
yeah,
how small of a
yeah.
business you have. We've been talking a lot about that. And that during your onboarding, which we're also excited that 2021 will bring on some onboarding stuff
Mm-hmm,
to our Blue Sparrow audience out there,
mm-hmm.
is just that you need to make sure you're telling them exactly what the expectation is, because
Yeah,
that's how you can hold them accountable
yeah,
for what they're doing. And I think for us, what we always have to reflect on when we're going through a time like this with a plan of action or even moving one step forward and going to a termination is that we have to look at, we're running a business and we have more than this one person relying on us for
mm-hmm.
their livelihood, and we have clients out there that we're ethically bound to be providing a certain level of service to. So I think a lot of ours come back to things like a therapist that's not showing up to appointments or not documenting appropriately or not billing appropriately. It rarely comes back to like doing anything super crazy. I don't think we give a lot of freedom to our therapists on how they make their schedule and things like that. But
Which
so
is almost
usually,
sometimes can be harder, like dealing
yeah,
with
yeah,
the ones who it's not like extreme. It's just, their documentation or this or that. And then we'll call
yeah,
to check up on them. And the family's, oh my gosh, they're great therapists. I'm like, well, that's great. But if they aren't doing this part of it, it puts us all at risk,
right.
And
Because
so,
we've been through audits,
yes,
so
yes,
we
yes.
know that if documentation isn't, our goal all the time, we always talk about this, is to serve clients and families and to do that in the most family-centered, functional, meaningful way possible. But if we're not doing the back end piece of that, like documentation, like showing up for appointments, we can't generate the revenue that's a certain revenue, that's a safe revenue to be able to stay in practice.
Yeah,
So we
yeah,
can't
yeah,
fulfill
yeah.
that, goal, that mission, if we're not doing the backside of things too. And I think that that's why so many therapists don't understand why we take documentation as seriously as we do,
Mm-hmm.
is because we've been through it. And we've read articles, after the fact during during audits about companies that were, and this is available to the public, that companies that are held accountable for millions of dollars, therapy companies held accountable for millions of dollars for not doing documentation. So anyway, that's why we do what we do. But, when I'm talking to someone, I have to have some sort of procedure in place where I'm looking at how frequently they're doing their documentation. If I looked at it from our documentation standards, are they meeting those? We do those periodically with our team, just to make sure that we're not ever left in kind of this vulnerable position for audits or anything. I try to make sure that we're, I'm talking to families and everything. And like you said, checking in with them if a situation like this arises, that, if I have one family saying they're not showing, then I might check in with a couple of other families to see, are they showing for them? So I can get a better idea. And I interview both sides, tell me what happened. You tell me. Truth is usually somewhere in the middle. And then I try to meet with them for a plan of action. And the plan of action is going to have a set amount of time. If you're in a big company, you may not be responsible for like those timelines and things like that. But if you're an owner of a smaller company or a manager of a smaller company, you may be the one responsible for saying, we're going to meet these goals in 30 or 90 days or whatever. And what the consequences will be if they're not, I think that it's really important. And we talk a lot about this in other trainings we do, to use principles of motivational interviewing, so that we're getting a lot of input back. And we'll talk about those in, like I said, other trainings and other between sessions. But how you approach things like that is going to determine how that person will respond. And I think now more than ever, we have to be careful of people who may respond in a negative manner that could be retaliatory towards the business. So that needs to be in policies and procedures too, that, if you're terminated for any reason, it's also in your code of ethics that you're not supposed to act disparagingly towards others in the field. It's a different wording, but there's that. I think in speech in the code of ethics, it's that we should act in a harmonious manner with all other, we have to put those pretty words in there as speech therapists. But just knowing that you can't do things like that. But we've got to be careful as well. So within your plan of action, you want to set a timeline. You want to take really good notes of the meeting, what's happened, where, what interviews did you do with families and other people to find out the information? What objective facts do you have? What are the consequences of the action? And then you want to get a signature so that everybody can be held accountable for what happened.
And making sure, like if you're in a supervisory position, that we're including the supervisor. So like if if it's an assistant, making sure that we're including that.
Right. Very, very true. Yeah.
On part of that. I think one of the biggest things that we've learned through all this is, like, every time we've gone through a plan of action, that it always results in us updating our policies and procedures.
It causes some reflection.
It makes you reflect. And we've had successes and failures with plans of actions. I mean, we've had some where it was just somebody kind of going through a rough time. And once we put a plan of action, they turned it around and they've still maintained that. We've also had some where it didn't work, but
where when we held them
and
when we held them to that standard and we said, we're not going to take this anymore, they did not particularly like being in that ultimatum kind of place of like, you're going to do this or you're not going to work here. They decided to quit, which is sometimes, as an owner, as a manager, whatever role you're in, better when someone quits versus you having to terminate them. Because most times when, someone calls you professionally to ask for a recommendation and you can say, that they quit, you're not like tarring them forever. I think that, lost my train of thought there. But I think it's just really about being honest, objective, having your facts, having the details there.
And also I think emphasizing to them why it's important.
Right. We've had a lot of people that didn't realize.
They didn't realize the impact of their one particular situation on everybody. you know, and I think that once again goes back, we have to be reflective and we look back at how do we need to make sure that they know that from the beginning, through our onboarding, through our training, but also emphasizing that in those meetings that this is why this is important. It's not, we just don't want to come up with random crap to do for you. Like these are why it's important for all of us that you do these things.
Right.
So,
well,
yeah,
and I think that you pointing out that reflection stuff, I think one of the first books we read together, and I'm trying to remember which one it was talking about good leadership, and that a good leader looks in the mirror, not out the window, you know? So they look at themselves as what role did I play in this not going well, in this, you know, falling apart, in this issue or error in the process, and you look in the mirror. Good to great. That's what it was.
Yeah,
and I take that with me everywhere. It's like, look, don't look out the window. Don't blame everybody else for it, because you have a responsibility in this when things break down as a leader. That was huge to me. And we post about Good to Great all the time. It's such a good book. I love that one.
The other part on that helped me was on the Good to Great. It talks about really how important it is to, to have these difficult conversations and to really address it as quickly as possible, because it might be that it's not a good fit on either side, and that typically does both sides a favor if it's not going to be a good fit, to address it as quickly as possible.
Right. Because what you have
through a termination, whatever it might be, but sometimes it's just, and so that kind of gave me some relief, to know, okay, maybe this is just,
not the right fit. And you're talking about that, and it makes me, say that again. You're talking about how, it might not be the right fit. It might not be, I'm just losing my train of thought over and over again.
Having those quick
yes, that was what I was going to say, is if you have one person that's doing the job at less than what the standard is, and they're getting to keep their job, everybody else is starting to question themselves on, well, why do I do the standard or above the standard if they get to keep their job and their pay by doing lower than the standard? And that's where that quick response to things is so important. And I think that that's something we learned the hard way early on, because we hated having these difficult, even if you say I like having the difficult conversations, I don't necessarily like them. I do them, but it's made me respond in a quicker manner. Not always a plan of action. Sometimes it's just a conversation. Hey, we're hearing this, and, I don't want us to get to that point. I want to see this happen, and some of our plans of action will include, that we're going to see this change in your documentation, timeliness, some sort of quality of it. Or also that you're going to go through a certain type of training to learn how to do that better. Because we're going to take responsibility for the fact that they may not know, and then with termination, again, you want to make sure everything's written. If you're working for a larger entity, you want to check in with HR and see, what the appropriate plan is for that, what steps you have to take. If you're a smaller company, you want to write that out in your policies and procedures as far as what happens, so that everybody is aware of what is a terminable offense and what happens when you're terminated, and when do you lose access to EMR? When do you lose access to your email? When do you have to turn in your keys? All of those things are part of that process of letting someone go. And I think that, again, those are things that we learned the hard way. Like, people weren't turning things back in, and people were wanting access to things for far too long. So we made sure that was part of our policies and procedures. And we're not a tiny business anymore. We started out, you and me, and then doubled and tripled over time. Now we're, 35, 40 therapists large. That's a pretty nice size company. So having, that mission and the policies and procedures has really helped us to know that everybody has a clear understanding of what their job is within our company. So I think that those are really important points to bring up. And I don't like it.
It's not fun.
But here I go smiling again, just because that's awkward and strange.
Well, thank you for talking about this.
Yeah, you too.
And, we'll meet up.
Good cop, bad cop, right?
Good cop, bad cop. Yep.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.